evening, everyone. If you would like, you can open your Bibles up to Mark chapter 4. Mark chapter 4, that is where we will pick up. We were in Matthew 13, and we looked at the parables of Jesus, and that was part of Jesus' very busy day. And what we're going to do now is we're going to flip over to Mark's account and really pretty much stay in Mark's account tonight. We may go over to Matthew or Luke for some details, but basically we'll stay pretty much in Mark's account on the events that we're going to talk about tonight. So it was a very busy day for Jesus. He had a lot of teaching and things that were done on that particular day. And then what we have in Mark chapter 4 and verse 35 is, on the same day, when evening had come, he said to his disciples, "Let us cross over to the other side." And so where do you think that most of this teaching was done with the parables and all of that? Do you remember? Capernaum. Yes, right in that area. And you remember, by the way, I don't know if you can see, remember we talked about that little cove that would be just perfect? You can actually see this on this aerial map here of that little dot right there. We think maybe that would be a good spot for Jesus to have done that teaching of the parables. We don't know for certain there. But he was somewhere in the area of Capernaum, and he says to his disciples at the end of this, "Let's go over to the other side." And you'll remember that he was in a boat doing the teaching. And so it seems it was just when he finished speaking, he said, "All right, let's sail away from the crowds and go to the other side." Before we get into this story any further, I want to go on a little tangent just for a second, and then we'll come back to the story, because the tangent is, I think, important to help us to understand something that was expected of the disciples. I want you to remember back when Abraham was asked to offer his son Isaac on the altar as a burnt offering. What did he do? He went to do it. He went to do it. And the Hebrew writer makes the point that by faith he offered his son Isaac, being confident that God would be able to bring him back even from the ashes if necessary. Why was he so confident that somehow Isaac would live, even if it was being resurrected? He was the son of promise. What was the promise that God made? Okay. But through Isaac, yeah, through Isaac, your son. Through Isaac, your son. Okay, so in Abraham's mind, if God said it would be through Isaac that these promises would come, then Isaac would have to live somehow. And so based upon that, he was willing to go and offer his son as a sacrifice, confident that somehow God would keep his promise of his lineage continuing through Isaac. Now, do you see how Abraham picked up on one little thing that God had said earlier and was so confident of God's word that he carried out this, which would be seemingly impossible? All right, let's keep that in mind. Now, let's continue back in Mark's account. So Jesus said, "Let us cross over to the other side." Now, when they had left the multitude, they took him along in a boat as he was. And that's interesting, as he was. I don't know exactly what Mark means there, but we do know it's been a very long day for Jesus. And what is he going to do when he gets into the boat? He's going to go to sleep. I think that as he was in his exhausted state. and so they took him into the boat, and there were other little boats with him. I'll do this since I've got this here. This is, I don't remember what year it was, but there was a real severe drought in Israel one year. It's probably been
1986.
Excellent. Was it 86?
That's what I read.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. Man, I'm glad I've got you as a co-teacher here. And the Sea of Galilee receded enough, and very close to the area of Capernaum, they discovered a first century fishing boat. And still pretty well preserved underneath the silt of the Sea of Galilee. And they were able to do a little reconstruction there of it. You can go and see that today. Then they did a replica of it that you can go and look at today and get some idea. So it was a pretty large boat, but this was the typical fishing boat. And now you can understand why they could get several of the apostles, if not all of the apostles, in this boat as they travel across. And so it seems to have been. And we get to verse 37, As they are going across, a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling with water. Now Jesus was in the stern asleep on a pillow, and they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" So what are they thinking their plight is here? We're going to die. We're going to die. And Jesus is just sleeping there. And so Jesus arose and he rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" Does Jesus seem pleased that they woke him up? No. Why? I mean, what does he expect of them? They know this sea. They know the dangers of a windstorm. They know this boat, and they recognize how severe this situation is. And they go to Jesus to say, "Hey, don't you care that we're all about to die here?" And you would think maybe Jesus would say, "I appreciate you waking me up. I appreciate you coming to me, and what great faith you have to come to me and ask me to be concerned with you about this." That's not how Jesus feels about this. Jesus seems to be bothered by their lack of faith. How could they possibly could have been expected to not be so fearful? Because he promised. Okay, he's the one that's promised, so he won't perish. All right, very good. What else? Can you think? Yeah. We're going to the other side. Let us go to the other side. And now I'll be honest with you. I think the chances of me latching on to that and having any comfort from that would have been, I have no faith. I would have had no faith either in this. But Jesus looked at it and said, "You shouldn't have been so afraid. You shouldn't have been so afraid." And I think that's amazing, first of all, that what Jesus is saying is, when I speak, you can hang on my every word. You can bet your life on what I say. And there's no reason to be afraid when I tell you we're going to the other side. And you're with me. And so you should not be so fearful. Whew. So I look at that, and I'm very sympathetic to the apostles, because I would not have fared any better. I'm confident. But I do see how much improving I need to do in that area, and how important it is that I listen carefully to what Jesus says, and I have full confidence in what he says. And so a pretty powerful moment here, I think. And so verse 41, he asked them why they were so fearful, and what was their response? Yes. The New King James says in verse 41, they feared exceedingly. Now they're not afraid of the storm anymore. It's past. What are they afraid of now? The one who has more power than the storm. And then they ask the question, Barbara, who can this be? Yes, that he has control even of the sea. Now, let me tell you what I think is happening here in this section tonight. And I'll turn it over to you just after I make this point. But what's happening in this section is they just had a long day of listening to Jesus' teaching. And you remember that during the course of that, they're coming to Jesus and saying, what do you mean by this parable? What are you trying to say here? And Jesus is teaching them. Now, they've been hearing his teaching. Now it's time to have their faith built. To have their faith built so that they have confidence that we need to listen to this teaching. We need to be obedient to this teaching. And so here's the first of those lessons. Jesus, the master teacher, the one that's been telling us this, he has more power than the sea. And the question comes up, well, who could this be then? Who can this be?
I like verse 41. So the question, who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him? Well, if they're good students of the scriptures they would have an answer to this. Psalm 65 is one example that comes to mind. being girded with might, who steals the rumbling of the seas, the rumbling of their waves, and the tumult of the peoples. They who inhabit the ends of the earth are in fear on account of your signs. So that correlates very heavily here. Another example, Psalm 89, 8 through 9. O Yahweh, God of hosts, who is like you, O mighty Yah? Your faithfulness also surrounds you. You rule the swelling of the sea. When its waves rise, you still them. Now think about Jonah chapter 1, when Jonah is fleeing there and he gets on the boat there with those men, and there's a windstorm comes. God is angry and he creates that windstorm. But Yahweh hurled a great wind on the sea, verse 4. Verse 11, the men say to Jonah, what should we do to you that the sea may become quiet for us? For the sea was becoming increasingly stormy. And when they throw Jonah overboard, Jonah 1:15, so they lifted Jonah up and hurled him into the sea, and the sea stood still from its raging. Then the men greatly feared Yahweh, and they offered a sacrifice to Yahweh and made vows. So here's one of these moments where you can look at Jesus and you can see the things he's doing, and you can connect him to that divine power that the Father has as well. And so I think there's an answer to that in knowing the scriptures. And just like Lonnie said, each account we're going to look at tonight, it's almost like you can keep track of, here's an example of Jesus' power. Here's an example of a different power he has. I think here's power over the elements and over the natural world. It's subject to him.
Can I list one more?
Yeah.
On there? Over in Psalm 107, in Psalm 107 is talking about how God, all the things that God has done for people, and that the earth should give thanks to God for his mercy. But I want to look at verse 23 through 30. And now this was a song that the Jews would sing. So you know songs that you hear on the radio, and you know the lyrics to them. And so if something happened, you could recall the lyrics to them. I wonder, along with these psalms that Collier just mentioned, if this wouldn't be one that is just running through their mind right now as they're thinking, who is this? So in Psalm 107 and verse 23, those who go down to the sea in ships, who do business on great waters, they see the works of the Lord and his mighty wonders in the deep. For he commands and raises the stormy wind, which lifts up the waves of the sea. They mount up to the heavens. They go down again to the depths. Their souls melt because of trouble. They reel to and fro and stagger like drunken men. They are at their wits' end. Then they cry out to the Lord in their trouble, and he brings them out of their distress. He calms the storm so that its waves are still. Then they are glad because they are quiet. So he guides them to their desired haven. Oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and his wonderful works to their children of men. Let them exalt him also in the congregation of the people and praise him in the assembly of elders. I mean, this is almost like exactly what happens to them. The Lord raises up a storm. They're at their wits' end. They're terrified. They cry out to the Lord, and he calms the sea and brings them to their destination. And, well, who is this that's doing this? And so you put these together, and the answer is who? It's Jehovah. It's Yahweh. It's the great I am in that boat with them. That's why they are greatly afraid. And it's an incredible moment. It's an incredible moment. Not only is it an amazing story to retell, it's an incredible moment of realization, I think, for them, and it should be for us also. Any thoughts, comments? Yes.
I think it might relate to another thing we'll talk about tonight. It's interesting to me, and I wonder if you have any thoughts on this, that Jesus performs miracles and does similar things, but does them in different orders. So here, he stops what's going on first, and then asks a question, and tries to almost make application, right? But then, like when we think about the paralytic who's brought in, it seems that he starts with the thought-provoking thing, and then everybody's like, well, who is this? Who says he can do this? He says he can forgive sins. And then he shows them the miracle afterwards. And I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, it's like, okay, why does he do some things? Why does he approach some things one way in one instance and then differently in another? I know we're going to talk in the next chapter about how he does that in a different way as well. But it's just curious to me, why wouldn't he first go, like, where's your faith? And then calm everything.
Right.
Instead, he calms it first.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe he's attending to the immediate need and then making application.
I wonder if it has to deal with the company present. So maybe there's people there that need to get the thought-provoking question first and then see the sign. But these are people that really should be believing. So he shows them the sign and then kind of ridicules them. I wonder if that's part of it.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, not yet.
Okay. I don't either. We'll keep an eye on that and see if we can make sense of it. Yeah, I don't know.
They're just as afraid after.
Right. Right. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Both seem to be pretty effective. Either seem to be equally effective, so I don't know.
I do think, real quick before we move on, it's interesting. Luke's account, when it talks about the description of the storm, says that they are in danger. It makes mention of it specifically. And so thinking about this account, the Old Testament, one of the great benefits of the Old Testament, other than the fact that it's God's word, is you see God keeps his promises. Here's an example of seeing God keep his promises in the New Testament. So that's pretty cool.
So I've got a thought question for you. What would a faith look like in this moment? If they would have had proper faith, what would have it looked like?
Probably not being so accusatory. You still ask for help, maybe not. You not care that you're perishing.
Okay.
I think that's
Yeah. Would maybe in sleep too? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, would have they still tried to bail out the water out of the boat? Or would have they just said, it'll be fine? Yeah. Would they still woke Jesus up? Maybe. They realize that he's going to be the source of their salvation. But I do think there would be a difference in how you do it. So I'm trying to, I don't know the answer to that, obviously. But I'm trying to think about, if we walk by faith, would we bail water out? Would we try to, when we're in trouble, would we try to do what we could do? Yes. Would that show a lack of faith? No. Would we call out to the Lord and say, please save us? Would that show a lack of faith? No. And so I don't know that some of their actions were necessarily wrong. It's just they didn't have faith. They thought they were going to die in this, because rather than say, well, I don't know how the Lord's going to do it, but I know that we'll get to the other side. And because he said that we will. So maybe it's by us bailing water out furiously, or maybe it is by us calling upon him to wake it, calling upon him to wake up. I don't know, but I know we will. But I don't think that they had that confidence. And I think that was the difference. And so I point that out just to say, we need to walk by faith. What does that look like? How does that change our actions? Yeah. Right. Yep.
I think at this point, their physical life becomes the most important thing. And that's where the faith issue was. The same thing with us today. When we face issues, we can do things to try to help that situation. We just can't lose faith that our physical life is the most important thing.
That's right. Very good.
There's another scenario that's going to come up similar to this one regarding the Sadducees challenging Jesus on the resurrection. And there's just a tidbit of information there, but it was enough that they should have known.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
So again, it's humbling and challenging to us to realize, every little critical detail
Yes.
is important
That's right.
to understand.
Very good.
They didn't realize, but we don't realize they were still earthly human beings. And they didn't understand. That's what most of us, because we think, are earthly human beings. We think like earthly human beings.
Yeah. Well, in one sense, they were fishermen. I assume this may have been their boat, or at least they had good experience with boating. They knew this sea better than a carpenter should. And so all of that would speak to the fact we understand the seriousness of this situation, and we're about to die. Jesus, what would he know about this? Well, he would. Who is this? Well, he's the one who made the sea. And so, yes, he understands this situation even better. And so,
And how much attention did you pay to him when you got in the boat and you're exhausted? It's like, let's just get in the boat.
yes, that's right.
I don't know how much attention they paid to me.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's what backing up to what Gerald was saying there. Man, I think that's so important for us. How many things do we miss? We just not pay attention to that God tells us. And therefore, we don't have the faith or the understanding that we need to have in situations because we just missed it. We just missed that detail. And it's like they kind of get it. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Yeah. And then, they run away when he's, yeah. That's right. Yep. Yes, that's right. That's why he's continually trying to teach them on that. Very good. We ready to move on to chapter 5 or anything else? Yes, sir.
How they approached him with the question, I think an answer is a lot of this, what we're talking about. They said, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?"
Mm-hmm.
Now you think about how they approached him with that.
Right.
That's the improper, faithful way of doing it.
Yes.
You were awakened from a sleep and someone came to you with that type of question. Jesus, of course, cared. They knew that he cared.
Yeah.
They knew his compassion that he had for the people and how he talked. But here they were, the type of question they asked. Perhaps if they had worded it a little differently, their faith might have shown a little bit better.
That's right. Good point.
And the same thing with us.
Yes.
It's how we approach God.
Right.
It's important.
Very good. Yeah. All right, chapter 5. All right, so the first thing, he shows them he has power over nature. Okay? Only God has that kind of power. Only Yahweh does. That's who this is. But now, when they get to the other side, they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. And so if they continue to sail across over to Gergasa, the Gadarenes, by the way, this photo is taken from Capernaum, looking straight across the Sea of Galilee over this area right here is Gergasa, area of the Gadarenes. And so you can see across there. That's where they went. The next morning they get there. And it says, when they had come out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. Matthew's account tells us there were actually 2 men that met him in this situation. With the focus is going to be on one, so Mark just covers one. If we were to go over to Gergasa, we know where Gergasa is, and right off of the seashore there, you would see this cliff, and all of these little crevices in this cliff are tombs, first century tombs. And so this is why we know where the place was, is because on this side, this is the area where there were tombs in the side of the hillside, on the mountainside there. And if you, well, that's not the photo that I thought was going to come up next, but we'll look at that. This guy would have been scary for a lot of reasons. What description do we have of him? You may have to, not all the descriptions in Mark's account, some of it was in Luke and some of it was in Matthew, but what do you know from him? Yeah, so this guy had this demon possession, and he was, basically what we would say is crazy. And they would bind him and lock him up because he was hurting himself. He would take rocks and he would cut himself with it. So they would put him in shackles so that he could be contained and controlled. And what would happen? He had superhuman strength to break these. All right, what else do we have from the description? Yes. So he lived up there in those tombs and would just cry out and harm himself with stones. Did he wear any clothes? No. What do you imagine him to look like? I mean, we got this artist depiction here, but have you been a little frightened? You've already had a nerve-rattling night. You arrive to the other side, and as soon as you step out on shore, here come these 2 demon-possessed individuals who have, one of them has superhuman strength and a wild look in his eye, and quite frightening. Was Jesus rattled by this? No, not at all. And as a matter of fact, as it describes here in verse 6, when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and did what? Bowed down to worship him and cried out with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, the Son of the Most High? I implore you by God that you do not torment me." From the other accounts, I think it's Luke's account, Does anybody remember what he specifically asked? There's a couple of things, but he asked him not to do something. This demon-possessed man asked Jesus not to do something. Do not torment me. I'm gonna turn over there and look at it in Luke chapter 8, because I want to read what it says here. I think this is interesting. In verse 28, when he saw Jesus, he cried and fell down before him, and with a loud voice said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For he commanded the unclean spirit to come out of him, and it seized him. He kept him under, drop down to verse 30. Jesus asked and said, "What is your name?" And he said, "Legion, because we are many demons," or because many demons had entered him. Legion has how many? Legion, army, legion? 5,000, yeah. And so here there's thousands of demons in this man. And they begged him that he would not command them to go where? What do you think the abyss is? There's a place that God prepared for the devil and his angels. Well, not Hades. Gehenna, hell, yes. Is hell a joking matter to demons? No. So, we have this cartoon idea about hell where the devil rules in hell, and no, the devil and demons don't rule in hell. They are terrified of the abyss. They are terrified of that place. And so here are the demons begging Jesus, "Please do not send us to the abyss." And go ahead.
With the parallel in Mark 8 verse 10, that seems to be kind of following the same order. And then at least mine says in verse 10, mine says out of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know, if that means anything. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that either on that.
I think they're saying, keep us here. Can we stay here?
Right.
Yes.
And then
Mhm.
maybe the flip side of that, not go there.
Right. Yep. And so, and it's here, I want you to think about this. Do you think the apostles recognize this guy's demon-possessed? I think just about everybody recognized this guy was demon-possessed. I mean, there were some, it's like, maybe I'm not sure about. This guy, he's got superhuman power. He's, I think we've got it that this guy's possessed. And what are the demons doing? Begging Jesus. So he has power over nature. What else does he have authority over? He has authority over the spiritual realm, over demons. And so Jesus commanded them to come out of the man. And where did he command them to go? There was a herd of swine grazing on the mountain there, and he commanded them to go into the swine. Now, I look at this as one of those things. It's like, you remember when they brought the paralytic and Jesus said, "Your sins are forgiven"? How did anybody know if his sins were really forgiven? Because he was healed. That's right. That became the visible evidence. How do you know these demons were cast out of the sky? Can anybody make a really good pig squeal? Can you imagine thousands of hogs running, squealing, plunging themselves off into the Sea of Galilee? That would have got everybody's attention. What caused them to do that? Well, you had this man who was out of his mind, who was cutting himself, who had this wild look in his eye. Now he looks completely normal and is fine, and all of a sudden all of these pigs go tearing off of this hillside and plunge into I think we can get an idea of what happened here and who had the power to make that happen. Now, I'll point this out because I think, I've enjoyed being in this area. There's only one place this could have happened on that side of the sea. Now, back in Jesus' day, the Sea of Galilee was actually a little bit, the shoreline was actually up a little bit. It's dropped, I forget, like 25 feet or something in the years since. But there's only one place on the whole side of the east of the Sea of Galilee where there was a steep place Here's another view of it right here. And the water line at this point would have come up to about halfway up that steep place where they could have run off. So that's cool to me just because we know where that happened. And by the way, if you were to look right above this steep place, right up on the hill, is where you would have seen those tombs. And so we've got enough details on this to know that this was the location that this took place at. So now we have floating pigs in the sea, and we've got a man sitting there in his right mind who was not in his right mind before. They put clothes on him, and there he is. What do the swine keepers, what do? They run into town and tell people what happened. So, you know, I was telling you, it's obvious what happened. And they're able to go into town and tell people what happened. And so the whole town comes out, and what do they see when they come out? They see the man. He's healed. He's in his right mind. He's clothed. They haven't seen him like this in I don't know how long. And there's Jesus. And what is the reaction of the people? They are afraid. Why would they be afraid? Would have you been afraid of Legion? Yes. But what do we know now? Here's someone more powerful than Legion. Now, even though this seems like this power is being used good, that type of power is still troubling. It's still fearful, and they're afraid. And what do? Sherry? They ask Jesus to leave. It's too much for them. And they ask him to leave. That's sad.
Information about Jesus had made it that far, like the Messiah. Like, do you know, or do you know if those people were of Jewish descent? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so there were some Jews that lived on this side, but this was predominantly Gentile territory. By the way, what did the Jews think of pigs, swine? Would they own them? No, they would not own them. And so just the fact that the swine is there gives us some indication this was not all under Jewish territory here. I was trying to think. So this is the area of Decapolis. And I know that there are places where it talks about that his fame went out all through Decapolis. And I believe we've already seen that. So I think that, yes, they would have some knowledge, or at least some in this area would have some knowledge of Jesus. But this is the first time that we've seen him in this area and his power working in this area. And so, yes.
Okay. In Matthew's account of this story, when the demons meet Jesus, they say, "Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" Whose appointed time?
Great question. Did y'all hear the question? All right. So the demons say, "Have you come to torment us before the appointed time?" So they recognize that there's some time coming when they're going to be tormented. That's one of the reasons why I link that back to the abyss being hell in that. So I think what they recognize is there's a time coming when the world ends and the judgment takes place that we will go into the abyss and be tormented. But we're not there yet, so have you come beforehand for that to happen? That's my understanding of it. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that?
They were created beings for this purpose, right? But you're saying that they were afraid of hell. So they didn't want to sit down here for that. I'm just trying to understand why would they, if they're not human, why would they be going to hell? I don't understand.
That's a great question. That's Collier, would you take that one?
I want to give you a chance.
Yeah, so there's a lot about the spiritual realm that I don't know and don't understand. I don't know that demons are not fallen angels. Maybe they are. I don't know. But we do know that that there does seem to be rebellious angels that are reserved for judgment to come. I don't know if that are demonic forces or not, but I tend to think that maybe it's the same. So I don't know that they were created evil. I think maybe they exercised free will and chose to be opposed to God rather than allied with God. But I'm really speaking outside of knowledge here on that. But they knew who he was. That's right.
They didn't cross over the Gulf, they were already here.
I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, it's not a bad question. I don't know. Yeah. So the Gulf, yes, that would be my understanding. Well, I think that Gulf is described in the Hadean realm. Yeah, and so I don't know.
So we know Satan is able to work.
Walk to and fro on the earth. Yeah.
Right. And we see him working in Job as well.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's a similar situation with these people.
Yeah. No, well, we're all curious, and wish Collier would speak up here.
How much time we have? We need to keep going.
Yeah, we need to keep going. All right. Okay. Why would they want Jesus to leave? Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. I do believe that the thing is, I don't believe that they're highly valuing the spiritual opportunity to have God's power in their presence. They're just afraid of God's power. And so we know John uses this type of language and Jesus uses this type of language that they're afraid of the light. And I don't know if that's exactly what's taking place here, but I think it's a lot of that here's the raw power of God being displayed, and they really don't want any part of it just because they're afraid of it.
Primarily a spiritual power, but by extension, it's also a little bit of physical power, because this is somebody they couldn't even bound with chains, and so that might be, double layer there. Scares me even more.
Yeah, and I don't know if these were Jews or Gentiles. What level of spiritual understanding they had or not. But not everybody's afraid of Jesus here. Not everybody.
They were terrified of this guy, with these two men. And so these men were kind of outcast in the village. They wanted nothing to do with them. Now one greater than them has come, and now they're really afraid.
I think that's right. Is the man afraid? What does he want to do? He's begging Jesus to go with him. And this is one occasion where Jesus does not grant the request. There are times where he calls people to follow him and they have excuses and don't. Here's an occasion where someone is begging to go with Jesus and he does not permit him to go. What does Jesus tell him to do? Yes, go and tell your friends the great things that the Lord has done for you and how he's had compassion upon you. And so what does he do? He goes and he departs and he proclaims in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled at this. When the apostles later on are going to travel to this area, they're going to seem to have great success with the gospel in this area. And I just wonder if it's not because you remember a few years ago, old Legion, and you remember when Jesus came over here? We heard about that, or we saw that. And now, here are his apostles coming saying he was the Son of God. And they had evidence to believe that.
So this is, again, another instance where Jesus says something differently than what he said in the past. We talked about he's called people before.
Mhm.
Now someone wants to come. He's like, nope, they just stay. He's performed miracles before, told them, don't tell anybody. And then it's still with people. But now he's telling people about it, and he does. Again, this is interesting to me, and I'm sure in this one, maybe you can see the circumstances are different, right? Like maybe these people, they're not wanting to come out to Jesus anyway, so maybe the danger of them, thronging him and flocking to him wouldn't be as much of a challenge, or maybe they haven't heard as much. This is an opportunity for them to hear. But it's just interesting how, again, this is a situation where it seems to be he gives very different instructions to what he's given before.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
Right.
And I think some of that is he sees the bigger picture that we don't see. I think he has compassion on these people
Mhm.
and saying they're scared of me, but they'll listen to him.
Yeah.
So
That's a great
you can't-
point.
You can't go with me. You need to be with those people because that's more helpful for them.
Yes. That's excellent. Excellent point. Well said.
I kind of put this account in the same category with the woman in the well. That here's Jesus going somewhere and laying the groundwork for when the kingdom comes. Like you said, the seed's already there, and then, like you said, the man is able to spread the word there. So when the kingdom comes, they will be ready and more receptive to it.
And can you just imagine him going into these towns and villages around, and all of the mothers taking their children and looking at him? But now he's different. He's dressed, he's clean, you can still see the scars where he had cut himself, but he's not the same. And now he's telling that Jesus came and he cast out these demons that were tormenting me and causing me to be that way. And to hear him speak with reason and sobriety, that would be so powerful, so powerful. And yes. So y'all help me out here, but the best that I can remember, we see a distressing spirit come upon Saul, but it's not described as necessarily a demon. I don't know of demon possession mentioned in the Old Testament. This seems to be something that was peculiar to this period of time, which raises an interesting question. We're not going to be able to get further in the text, so we will spend our last couple of minutes on this question maybe. Why would God... Okay, so we mentioned Job and Satan roaming to and fro on the earth during times of Job. In order for Satan to be able to do the things that he did to Job, what did he have to have? Permission from God. I suppose, based upon that, I'm supposing that with demons, the power of demons, they too had to have some type of allowance or permission from God to be able to do what they did. So apparently they did not have such permission through most of humans' existence, but suddenly at this time, they are allowed to have such power. Why do you think that might be the case? It's beneficial to what Jesus came to do. How so? Yes. People are recognizing this evil force. These evil forces have started to be able to take over and do these things. And then all of a sudden, one with greater power comes and is able to subdue these evil forces. What does that say about him? And I think, so this story, I think, is a very good example of the very point that is being made there, is he has control over nature, he has authority over the spiritual realm, because here's one that has thousands of these evil forces, these demons, and Jesus, they're begging Jesus. They're falling before Jesus, and Jesus commands them, and they obey. And so I think that God, during the New Testament period, allowed demon possession for that period of time to demonstrate the greater power of his Son. And not now. That's right. So I think just what he was saying, there wouldn't be a need for it today, because just like with miracles, you have a time that was needed for confirmation, but once that was confirmed, the point was made. Today, I don't think. Yes, I think that we still recognize Jesus' authority over the spiritual realm today, but I don't know that. I don't know. It could be. I mean, he can liberate us from sin, and it's an evil force. But yeah, so I don't know. All right, we got into some deep theological waters tonight, but thank y'all for your good comments and questions.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video to be beneficial, please follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to share it with others that you feel like may benefit from it. If you need to contact us, please contact us via email at quinn.church@yahoo.com. Also, if you're in the area, we would love for you to come visit with us at one of our assemblies. Have a good day.